She laughed when she said, "Beat me in chess and I'll marry you." She wasn't laughing 3 moves later. You ever meet someone who doesn't say much, but somehow their silence speaks louder than everyone else's noise? That was Calvin Brooks. Most nights, around 10 p.m., when the streets of Columbus, Ohio began to empty and the world seemed to slow down, Calvin was just clocking in. The glass towers of Davenport Industries loomed above the city like monuments to ambition. Inside, though, the building was quiet, too quiet. Calvin would push his cart down the endless marble hallways, the faint squeak of the mop echoing softly in the still air. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was steady, and steady meant peace. He'd been there nearly 7 years, never late, never complaining. His earbuds filled the silence with the low hum of old blues. Muddy Waters, B.B. King, a little Coltrane when he wanted to remember who he used to be. There was something about those empty offices that calmed him, the stillness, the order, the way the world finally stopped demanding noise. Everyone else had gone home, the executives, the assistants, the analysts, all done chasing numbers. Calvin stayed behind to clean up what they left behind. He didn't envy them. He'd lived long enough to know that money doesn't always buy rest. Every so often, he'd pause by the glass conference room where the board held their weekly meetings. The long mahogany table gleamed under fluorescent lights, and near the center sat a chessboard, black marble, the pieces frozen mid-game. That board always caught his eye. Not because of the game itself, but because of what it represented: precision, patience, control. What no one knew, what no one even thought to ask, was that Calvin had once been a chess prodigy. Before the janitor's uniform, before his mother's illness, before life demanded sacrifice, he'd played tournaments across Indiana and Michigan. He'd dreamed of sitting across from the greats, of one day earning a title that meant something. But when his mother fell sick, the pieces went back into the box. He traded bishops and rooks for brooms and rags, and never looked back. At least not until that night. There was music on the top floor, laughter, glasses clinking, the muffled hum of a party. Davenport Industries was hosting its quarterly reception, the kind of event reserved for those whose names appeared on office doors. It was hosted by the CEO herself, Victoria Hale. A woman everyone either feared, admired, or wanted to become. She was 37, brilliant, polished, and utterly relentless. By that age, she had turned the company into one of the fastest-growing logistics firms in the Midwest. Her office was all glass and steel, minimalist, immaculate, a space that mirrored her personality. Her employees whispered about her. Some admired her drive. Others called her cold. Victoria didn't care. Success, to her, was its own defense. On her desk sat a black marble chessboard, a gift from her father, who taught her that life was a series of calculated moves. She played whenever she could, between meetings, after hours, against any executive foolish enough to believe they could win her favor by beating her. None ever did. For Victoria, chess wasn't just a game, it was philosophy. The slow cornering, the patience, the discipline, it mirrored her approach to business and life itself. That night, she stood before her staff at the reception, champagne in hand, smile rehearsed to perfection. To precision, to power, and to never settling for second place, she said. The room echoed with applause. Cameras flashed. Victoria's assistant, a nervous young man named Noah, leaned in and whispered, "Should I reset your chessboard for tomorrow's meeting?" She smirked. "Leave it. It's a reminder that every move matters." But across the room, quietly emptying trash bins, was Calvin, invisible, as janitors often are. His movements were slow, deliberate. He blended into the background. Yet when he looked at Victoria, he saw something familiar, that same hunger for control, that same quiet obsession he'd once had. He couldn't help but wonder what would happen if someone like her ever met someone who could truly outthink her. The party grew louder. Music filled the air, champagne flowed, and someone rolled out Victoria's personal chessboard as entertainment. "Come on, Victoria, one of the executives teased. Show us that famous brain of yours. She smiled. Careful what you wish for. Within minutes, she was seated across from Aaron Pike, one of her vice presidents. 10 minutes later, she checkmated him effortlessly. The room erupted in laughter and admiration. Strategy, she said smoothly, raising her glass. That's all it takes to win anything worth having. Someone joked from the crowd, what's next, Victoria? You gotta marry the man who finally beats you. She laughed, confident, dismissive, a queen mocking her court. Beat me in chess and I'll marry you, she said. The crowd roared. It was just a joke, a throwaway line from a woman who had never lost. But somewhere in the corner, a quiet chuckle broke through the noise. It came from Calvin. The sound was small, but in that moment of laughter and champagne, it cut through like a blade. Victoria's eyes narrowed. Something funny, Mr. Janitor, she said, her tone light but sharp. The crowd turned toward him, curious. Calvin straightened, respectful. No, ma'am, he said softly. Didn't mean no disrespect. She studied him, amused now. Then what was funny? Calvin hesitated. Just thought it was a bold bet, that's all. Her eyebrow lifted. You sound like a man who plays. Used to, he replied. A murmur ran through the crowd. The janitor plays chess, someone whispered. Victoria smiled, intrigued. Used to? What stopped you? Life, he said simply. Life stops most people, she replied. I prefer to keep moving. Then, with a tilt of her chin toward the board, she said, Tell me, Mr. Brooks, do you think you could beat me? Calvin met her eyes for the first time. I don't think about beating people, he said calmly. I just play the board in front of me. The crowd laughed, a few nervous chuckles, but Victoria's gaze didn't waver. Then play it, she said, gesturing toward the empty seat. Calvin shook his head. I'm working, ma'am. Can't be sitting up here embarrassing folks. Oh, I'm not worried about embarrassment, she said, voice dripping with confidence. Are you? Phones came out. The air shifted. Calvin sighed, set his gloves down, and sat across from her. His hands moved slow, steady, like a man who knew the rhythm of the board by heart. We'll make it quick, she said. I've got another toast to make. 3 moves, he murmured. She looked up. What was that? I said it won't take long. The room fell silent. The opening began, pawn to e4, a classic start. Calvin mirrored it. Then Victoria moved her knight, aggressive and confident. Calvin countered calmly. She smiled, leaning in. You know, they say chess reveals who we really are. How we think, Calvin replied without looking up. Or how we underestimate people. The line landed heavy. Her smile faltered, just slightly. She moved again, quick and assertive, trying to trap his pawn. You think I underestimate you, Mr. Brooks? You don't see me at all, he said quietly. Then, with the kind of still precision that comes from mastery, Calvin moved his queen. Check, he said. Gasps rippled through the room. Victoria blinked, scanning the board. She moved instinctively to defend, too late. Calvin moved again. Checkmate. The room froze. Glasses hung midair. The music faded into silence. The CEO of Davenport Industries had just been beaten, in 3 moves, by her janitor. Victoria's hand trembled over the pieces. She searched for a mistake, a loophole, a way to undo what had just happened. There was none. Calvin stood, slid his gloves back on, and said softly, Good game, ma'am. Then he walked away. That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. By Monday morning, everyone in the company had seen the video. The janitor checkmated the CEO. It was whispered in hallways, gossiped over coffee. Victoria Hale, the woman who never lost, had been outplayed in 3 moves. Yet when she walked through the office, her head was still high. Only Noah saw the shift, the quiet unease behind her eyes. That afternoon, she said, "Bring me Calvin Brooks." When Noah hesitated, she stood. "Then I'll go to him." She found him in the West Wing, mop in hand, earbuds in. He looked up as she approached. "Didn't think I'd see you down here," he said with a calm smile. "I owe you that much," she replied. "You embarrassed me," she admitted. "But that's not why I came. I wanted to understand how you saw it so fast. How I didn't." Calvin wiped his hands on a rag. "You were playing me," he said simply. "I was playing the board. Big difference." Victoria exhaled, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "You talk like a man who's thought about that game." "I don't think about the game," he said. "I think about people." She studied him. "You ever play professionally?" "Used to. State level. Indiana, Michigan. Won a few, lost a few." "What happened?" "My mom," he said quietly. "Got sick. Needed care. Chess didn't pay bills, but mopping floors did." His voice was steady, but the weight behind it silenced her. For the first time in a long while, Victoria didn't have a comeback. "I misjudged you," she said finally. Calvin smiled faintly. "You didn't misjudge me. You just never looked close enough." They stood there, the CEO and the janitor, the queen and the pawn, realizing how wrong the board's hierarchy really was. "You ever think about teaching chess again?" she asked. He chuckled. "To who? Folks up there too busy to learn." "What if I'm not?" she asked softly. He looked at her, and for the first time, saw not arrogance, but curiosity. "Maybe," he said. "If you're ready to lose a few more times." That was the beginning of something neither expected. Every Friday evening after that, when most of the staff had gone home, the break room light stayed on. 2 figures sat at a small table, that same black marble chessboard between them. Sometimes Victoria won. Most times, she didn't. But that didn't matter. Between the moves, they talked, about life, about failure, about how easy it is to stop seeing people once you start climbing too high. Victoria began to change. She greeted the night crew by name. She started walking the halls not to inspect, but to listen. And Calvin, he didn't change much, except now people saw him. They said hello. They respected him. Sometimes, while mopping late at night, he'd glance at the chessboard in her office and smile. 3 moves, he'd whisper. Months later, during a company-wide meeting, Victoria stood before her employees and said, "A company is like a chessboard. The CEO might be the queen, but the game doesn't work unless every piece moves with purpose. The janitor, the driver, the intern, they all matter. Remember that before you call someone less than you." The room erupted in applause. Calvin wasn't there to hear it. He was downstairs, polishing the marble floors, a quiet smile on his face. Because for him, it was never about winning. It was about being seen. And maybe that's the real lesson, that brilliance doesn't wear a title, and wisdom doesn't need applause. The next time you pass someone who seems invisible, the janitor, the cashier, the bus driver, look twice. You might be standing next to someone extraordinary, someone who gave up their dreams so others could chase theirs. Because talent has no uniform, and respect costs nothing. So ask yourself, are you really playing the board, or just playing the people on it?